So, like, is there anything that you remember from set, like, kind of the discussion of like, what do we do here and how do we make this better? Because in post production, we got to remove all of this. So, like, sanding
Yeah,
was actually a big challenge.
Or was that the
I mean
one time where you were like,
go
screw it,
ahead.
post production will just fix it, just forget it, they'll figure it out. Hey, I'm Walker Whited,
I'm Sean McCain.
and we're
Still not doing it.
we're co-owners of W Square Media, which is a post-production company located in Atlanta, Georgia.
One of the things that Walker and I discuss a lot is the post-production process and how that works within the great scheme of this entire project or movie being put together. And what are the pitfalls and how can we make it better?
Today we're talking with AJ Jones, the co-writer and director of The Curse of La Patasola, which came out via Vertical Entertainment. We did post with him all the way through. We edited it, we colored it, we mixed it, Foley, creature design. It was a big one.
Today we're going to talk about what it's like to transfer from using one editor to the next in the middle of the process.
We're going to talk about creating a creature and creating, the creature sound design for this made-up creature that they're making for this particular movie.
Another thing we're going to talk about is color and what happens when you set a look from the beginning but realize through the project this isn't working. And how does that communication happen from going to your team of saying you have a look but we need to change it?
All that and much more coming up right now. All that and more is coming up as we talk with AJ Jones right now. So I think the first thing we'll talk about is
How easy it was, all of it.
Yeah, exactly. How easy it was. You just snapped it.
Yeah.
Simple. It was the easiest we've ever done, and we'll see you guys later.
Yeah. All right. The end.
Cool.
Cut.
Filmmaking in 101.
Yeah.
Put that on TikTok. No, let's talk about just the idea of the Curse of La Patasola. Just quick summary of what is La Patasola.
Oh yeah. So my co-creator, she is Colombian. Her family's from basically the border of the Amazon rainforest. And when we knew we wanted to make a horror movie, she shared with me all of these like creatures that her family believes in. This like book of monsters that live in the jungle. And we basically settled on the Patasola because she's a one-footed woman who haunts people, who some people believe that she's this huge creature like a dinosaur. Other people believe that she's just sort of this beautiful South American woman who kind of more like a vampire who lures you in and sucks your blood. So we liked that the legend had so many different versions of it that we had some freedom to kind of play with her on screen. And we also wanted to create a monster that just had never been seen on screen before. And we had our location down here in Florida, Lake Louisa State Park, and we knew we wanted to make a horror movie there. And so we settled on the Patasola, equal parts for the freedom of the legend, but then also the pushing ourselves to build a creature that has never been seen before, basically.
Right. And we'll come back to building on it. So anyone who, I mean, the movie's on Stars, for God's sake, you can watch it.
Yeah,
It's
currently
out there.
streaming on Stars until, I want to say, October 2023. And then we'll be moving to, I believe, Tubi for a few years, I believe. But yes, Stars currently,
Awesome.
yeah.
And then, I mean, people can go watch it if they, it's weird. It's one of those things where it's like, I feel like you should have heard of it, but also the industry is massive. So if they haven't heard of it, Cliff Notes.
It's so funny. I loved Pedro Pascal was just on SNL, and one of my favorite sketches they did was this like Hollywood game show, Hollywood quiz show, and asked them questions about all about Eve and Top Gun and these huge movies. And then they did the 2020s, and they were talking about Nicole Kidman was just in a thing, Samuel L. Jackson was in a thing, and nobody knew what they were. And these people were all nominated for Oscars. Nobody had known the movies. Nobody had seen the movies. And I love that sketch because I think it just goes to the fact of there's so much content right now. There are so many services and so many shows and movies coming out that big mega stars are in things that 99% of the world doesn't even know.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's
So
multiple times I've
we
like
really
found.
learned that
Oh
when the
yeah.
movie released. We really learned that
That,
like you, yeah, people are overwhelmed with stuff to
oh yeah.
watch, and to get someone to watch your movie, even on a streaming service the size of Stars, like it still actually means a lot when someone watches it and tells you they watched it. So we learned that, yes.
Yeah, but it's amazing, like what you're saying about content, because there have been multiple things, even back from like 2015, where I'll see like, wait, that guy was in that movie and I never heard of it. Or I was telling you about it the other day,
Yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola. You know, right? Isn't that who I said it was? I think it
Yep.
was him. No,
No, you told me that's who it was, and we found out it
I
wasn't.
said it was Francis. There's another big time director. I'll think of it at the end of this when we've hung up.
Uh,
But anyways, he did like some small action movie recently. It was like, wait, that guy did an action movie that I've never heard of. What's going on?
I think that's what
Yeah,
you're
and
seeing
you've
is
got a lot of big directors popping down to do theater, or not theater, to do TV. You've got a lot of big screenwriters who used to write big budget Hollywood movies are now turning into showrunners on TV shows. So it's the shift is really interesting to see the big creators and sort of what they're doing. Those people who used to make, big movies in that mid budget range, I mean, those people are now making TV because it's where you can tell those types of stories now. It's interesting.
It's saturated, but it's also homogenized. You can jump around to different things.
yeah. We actually had this
The
conversation
stature,
right
the
beforehand.
stature. Go ahead.
We'd had this conversation right beforehand that for the last few years, especially since COVID, there seemed to have been this boom of create as much content as possible and like get it out there, get it out there, get it out there. And it kind of seems now everybody's kind of pulling back a little bit. Like there was a
Yeah.
ton of money dropped into the industry, and now everybody's kind of like, oh man, like the streaming services aren't working like we thought they were. This isn't working like we thought they were. And us being, a post house, we're kind of looking at how do we shift with this industry now,
Sure.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
you as a director, it's how do I shift with this industry now that's making a big shift? Before it was create content. Now it's kind of changing because we're realizing, like you said, there's massive directors, massive actors now saying, there's nothing big enough to make it to the silver screen. So what do we do now?
Yeah, and it's that's just the evolution of any business, any industry, any infrastructure. Is there's a new technology or a new pathway to it. Everybody jumps in to hit the gold rush, and then the gold dries up, but only a select people who have done the right things are the people who stick around and keep doing it. I feel like that's just kind of an inevitability of any industry. But you just learn, as long as you keep your eyes open, you learn, what is working, what is happening, where are people going. Because I mean, one of my favorite shows that I watched recently is Reboot. It's not a lot of people know about this show. I thought it was hilarious. It's got Keegan Michael Key in it. Johnny Knoxville's actually in it, and he's hilarious. It's Hulu is doing a reboot of an old TV show, and it's one of my favorite shows I've seen in years. And Dan Levitan, the guy who created Modern Family, created this show. So you're talking about a really funny show with a huge cast, with a phenomenal, Emmy-winning showrunner, and they got canceled on Hulu after one season. And so you can feel everyone's it ballooned, and everyone's sort of closing in on, when Netflix cuts a whole bunch of shows, when HBO takes Westworld completely off the planet. You can feel there's like we fattened up, and now everything is coming back, and it was sort of a rush, and now it is sort of a lull. So
Right.
I think that's the heartbeat of Hollywood, honestly. If you ask me, if you want my opinion, I think it's just
Well, speaking
good
of
stuff
rushes,
stays.
speaking of rushes and lulls, let's talk about post production.
Yeah.
How's that for a
Transition.
transition?
That was nice.
Okay, so
Segue thing.
all right, before we get too far ahead, rundown, quick synopsis of what's the movie. What is Curse of La Patasola about?
Sure. So it's two couples who go on a young 30s couples. They go on a camping trip just to sort of get away, kind of from the pandemic, but just to get away and sort of work on their relationships together. The Patasola, her legend is all about people who cheat on their partners. That's kind of the basis of her horror. Is she terrorizes, haunts people who have cheated on their partner. So a moment of cheating happens on this trip, and basically these four people in their each distinct ways get haunted by the curse of the Patasola, of La Patasola. So it's basically a survival creature feature with a little bit of don't cheat on your partner message in there, basically.
So you're talking about the creature. I mean, that was a massive draw to this, right? I mean, getting to build this thing. Talk a little bit about how you guys got to build a physical creature. I remember the first time, really quick. I remember the first time seeing footage of the
Yeah.
creature, and I was like, "Wow, that's some really
Um,
good VFX of this creature coming out of the trees." And you were like,
um,
"Wait, no, that's real." I was like,
yeah,
"How?"
yeah. So the creature was pretty basic in how we animated it. It was just a big creature suit with Hamid Thompson, or no, Hamid wasn't it. I have to make sure. I would tell Hamid I didn't say his name. With not Hamid Thompson in the suit, and then he was fully doing all the motions and stuff, and then we basically just VFX the face. So he would do like he would just kind of do a roar, and he could sort of half open the mouth, and so we animated the mouth. Darion Donju, our VFX supervisor, he put on the teeth and all the grime and stuff, and then her eyes. Anytime she would do expressions and stuff like that, that was Darion. So a fully practical creature suit, literally moving in the jungle, and then VFX the face.
And then, how tall was this suit? Because he was on stilts, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was on he yeah, so the suit was basically two stilts that kind of I believe they literally welded them together to kind of create one super strong stilt. And he put his feet. If this is the top of the stilt, Hamid was standing on top of the stilt like this. So the suit was kind of like this, basically, and it was kind of a big pogo stick because the Pathasola only has one leg. That's what the Pathasola translates to, is the one-footed woman. So he basically put his legs together into a giant pogo stick with huge, massive arms. I think when he stood, because he had to lean over in order to physically move, but I think when he actually like stood up back, it was probably like 9 feet tall or
Oh, wow.
That's
something.
pretty
She
impressive. I
was.
mean, that's
Yeah.
something actors can react to, and
I think it was cool because we only had the money to basically get 3 full-ish days of the creature on film. Like we only had 3 shoot days to get all of the creature stuff. That's all the money and time we had. So we shot it at the very end. So we had, I believe it was like 16 days of shooting the whole movie without the creature stuff. And so everyone was like, this is a creature movie, right? Like there is a creature that comes here. We keep having to be like,
it's coming.
I promise you,
Yeah.
it's coming. I promise you, it's coming. And then finally, to see Hamid for the first time step through the trees, and that it was what I would imagine making Jurassic Park felt
Yeah.
like the first time they saw the Triceratops
Right.
breathing. Like it was just that moment of like, well, oh, this is the thing. This is it. So that was pretty amazing. Yeah.
That's an interesting thing about. I mean, this is an indie movie. You guys didn't have a ton of money, so was that where most of your money went? Was these guys who made the creature and
I would say the creature practical build, as well as the VFX to make the creature alive. I would say probably ended up somewhere around probably a fifth of the entire budget of the movie.
I'd imagine though there was some like I don't want to say favors, but I mean I'd imagine there's some discussion with these creature guys. Hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to do it? Was
Oh,
on an
it was
indie
it
thing?
was it was COVID. Genuinely, it was COVID. The timing of making the movie was a big part of it because everyone was down because of COVID. It was during the initial big shutdown, but we knew we every time we looked at, okay, what types of things can film right now? What can you film and keep people safe? It was write a really small, contained movie, shoot it all outside, create a sort of COVID safety bubble for your crew. I mean, and we just started checking boxes off, and we were like, okay, well, we shoot it all outdoors in a state park, a really remote state park down in Florida where there's nobody else around. Create a little COVID safety bubble. Okay. Um, we booked 5 vacation homes that were empty and created sort of a kind of Tyler Perry style like COVID bubble where everyone was self-contained basically. COVID test. So we brought down our own COVID tests, our own rapid blood tests, which was actually so much better than the PC, whatever the nasal ones at the time were called, because we had a scene, for instance, where 2 girls were sharing a joint, and if we had any worry about COVID, which we did, I mean, COVID was from the beginning of the process, we genuinely tested both of them before we shot that scene. So during a setup, Brad, our DP, is literally with JR Gaffer setting up the scene, and we're over here COVID testing our 2 girls real quick to make sure that they can share this joint in the middle of the scene. So it it was all born in COVID. It was all COVID was just such a part of pre-production for us that when it came to building the monster, I mean, we were just so honest, and we told Hex Mortis Design Syndicate. We had met Josh from Hex. We had met him through some mutual production friends, and we just told him. We said, "Look, we don't have a lot of money. This is what we have. This is what we want to build. Are you guys available, and do you want to do it?" And they basically jumped on board because they were excited to make something they had never made before. I mean, these are guys who have built, any kind of generic sounding creature you can possibly imagine. So when you tell these guys, "Hey, I want to build this thing," and they go, "I've never heard of that. What is that?" I think that's what really got them on board. Um, it's not like we did not pay them any money because it was a huge part of our budget, but it was certainly not what they normally make. So I really think it was the idea that we really were trying to push the envelope with something new that got them excited about it more than anything,
It's a
honestly.
cool indie filmmaking thing right there. I mean, what does it hurt to ask? What does it hurt to try? What does it, obviously you
That's
started
the whole.
paying,
That's the whole thing. Is you just maybe that's just my years of acting coming into play, but you just get so used to being told no
yeah.
that it just doesn't. It's not even something to be concerned with. It's just, of course you're going to ask somebody to do something because what are they going to do? Tell you no, and that's at the end of the day. It's like that's the easiest thing to do is ask someone if they, "Hey, do you want to help me make this thing?" No. Okay, cool.
Next thing.
Moving
Yeah,
on.
exactly. Yeah. Let me book in that though with you guys weren't just shooting out in the woods. Like you guys had the permission from the state parks and all that, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Throwing that out
So the
there
whole
for everyone
idea,
to know.
we had no movie if we didn't have a location, obviously, because indie movies are the location. I mean, that's just it. It's where do you have access to shoot at, and then what do you make around that place? That's an indie movie basically. And yeah, the state park was down near my family home down in Florida, so we'd gone there on a hike and just genuinely asked, "Hey, can we make a movie here?" And it was as simple as that.
And they said no.
It was very expensive. We got a nice hometown discount. It was we would not have even thought about making a movie if we did not have a location approved that we had access to. I mean, that was completely step one before a story, an idea,
Yeah.
camera, any of that. Yeah.
You had this monster, you built it, you had the ability to have it, in the woods, but then the next part, after this was filmed, everything was done. The next part is y'all had to figure out post-production,
Yep.
you got done filming, you got done in the woods, in the hot Florida woods. I'm sure that was
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Bunch of mosquitoes. But then you had to figure out post production. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked pretty early on. I think y'all had,
Mm-hmm.
actually before shooting, you and I had started discussing post production for the film. And like with anything, everything changes all the time in the film industry.
Yep.
Um, and without like going into names or anything like that, but like I remember originally there was another editor attached to this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just from, and I think from the beginning, of course, I'm always trying to sell our company, and I'm like, well, we could do a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
we got an editor, we're set up, and I was like, all right, cool. Y'all finished filming. I think y'all took a couple weeks to recoup from the rush,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you
It
started
was,
moving into it. But then you ended up changing editors, and one of the things Walker and I were discussing is, as a director, that can be a terrifying moment because this is
mm-hmm.
who's going to put your vision together. Um,
And all of a sudden they're busy and they can't make it work.
right.
What was that like having to
Yeah. That's
change?
true. Go ahead.
Just because that was the question, was what was that like having to switch it up, in the editing
Yeah,
process?
it was terrifying. I mean, it's there's no good way to feel about that. I think that's the sort of thing you have to be prepared for in indie filmmaking is when you can't afford someone's time the way that their life needs to be afforded. Like when you can't pay somebody enough to just have their undivided attention, you have to work within anyone's schedule. And sometimes people don't have time to give you because they have legitimate other things that they have to do and they have to eat and pay their rent and stuff. So that's sort of an inevitability sometimes of making indie stuff is if you don't sit and edit physically yourself, yeah, you have to sort of be at the mercy of people who have offered to help you. So yeah, I remember going through that. I remember the moment we decided we had to make a change, and I have absolutely nothing negative to say about this person at all. Love this person to death. It was just we just we couldn't afford their time the way that a feature film needs. And so I think I had a Brad had been pitching you guys too as well, but I think the reason I didn't immediately connect you guys with editing the movie was because I think I had already had that person attached
Right. Yeah.
when I was talking to Brad, and so Brad started pitching you guys as everything else on the post end.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of where eventually he was like, "Oh, they edit too." I was like, "Oh, well, shoot! If they're already doing this, well, then yeah, just
Yeah.
that just makes all the logical sense in the world." Yeah,
I remember
but it
getting the
was no,
footage, and
it was scary. It was
she
scary
had
because
cut the third act, right?
it feels like you're handing someone your baby,
Yeah.
and then you have to find someone else to hand your baby to. It's a little it's just scary. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's I mean every part of this was scary. So it's just another scary part, I guess, at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
But she had cut the third act. I remember getting the footage, and like I was
Mhm.
like, all right, I'm not gonna watch hers. I cut the third act first because that's what we wanted to see. That's what you guys were using to sell the
Mhm.
movie. And then I went back and looked at hers and was like, oh yeah, we did a lot of similar things. It was really interesting to see that, what she was doing. There
That's
was a lot of
yeah.
similar stuff between the cuts.
That's one thing I was proud of is that I shot
Specifically. Yeah.
the right amount of footage that where it could only be cut sort of a certain
Yeah.
way. The story was there. It was not. It was it was pretty it was pretty cut and dry in my opinion. Sort of what the story was. We didn't shoot a bunch of excess
Yeah. Well, and props to
stuff
you
that.
because I mean we see a lot of projects where someone's like, we're gonna figure
It's
it out in
guesswork.
the edit. Like we're
Yeah.
gonna figure out the story in the edit.
Here's a bunch of shots, stitch them together and see what actually
Yeah, see what
tells
can
us.
happen. And props to you. Like that's not what this was. Like it was pretty straightforward. Like here's a script, here's a
Yeah.
story, like we got it. So yeah, the transition wasn't too hard for an editor, swap editors while scary because like you said, it's like your baby. And like you don't
Mhm.
know what this person's going to say, like, well, I got rid of this, and it's like, oh my goodness, what's
Yeah.
happening? So yeah,
Yeah.
we were
I think that's a language I don't speak, is when people are saying they're going to find the story in the edit, or they're, to me that's just not cinema. And maybe that's just where, like, I know a lot of people keep saying there's sort of a lack of respect for the filmmaking process, or for movies, or for things of how they are, and maybe that's just sort of a bleed over of like content, the craze for content. Just shoot anything and we're gonna put it together and make it something. I mean, to me, cinema is there's no good movie without a good script. So to me, it's you do, and I don't even feel like I wrote a great script. I There's so much that I have already learned from this first one to take into the next one, that just on a storytelling side, to me, if you don't have a compelling story, you don't have anything to shoot. So I feel, first, I just don't speak that language. I speak the
Yeah.
language of, no, you get it on the page first, because if it's not up here, how are you going to shoot anything worthy of your time? Because you've also, as a director, you've got to be editing up here while you're filming. You have to be. So if you don't even know what your story is, how can you, how I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
that's sort of a foreign language to me, I guess.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, and y'all actually took some time. I remember, so y'all had the scripts and everything in the process of actual pre-production. We had to figure out a look for the film. So
Mm-hmm.
Brad, the DP, went out, shot some footage. We kind of created a look. But what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, and something I would love to get into, is so when we got into post production afterwards, we kind of had a look created. I think like Kim and I had created a LUT, so like a shoot LUT for y'all to view
Mm-hmm.
on set. And like there was a vision, and then it was kind of like a very the only color I can really, it's very much like a coral color, this Florida color, this kind of like deep reds in the forest, just kind of warm look. And we
Mm-hmm.
actually colored the movie that way at first. And I remember at a point you came back and you said, "This isn't it, guys." Like
Mm-hmm.
I think we had a vision at first, but it's not working. Like I saw it, and it was an interesting part of color because like Walker and I've talked about this. Everybody says the same. Like while we're talking, we all say the same thing. We're like, "That's exactly what we want." And what
Mm-hmm.
we find out is sometimes how we've conveyed our words, that it doesn't. When we see it on screen, all of a sudden, like we're all like, "Hey, that's not actually what I was talking about." Because we all
Yeah.
said the same thing, and language is a hard thing to always get across to everybody. And it was nothing wrong per se in anything that had been done or shot. Like Brad did a killer job. It was just all of a sudden we got to
Mm-hmm.
the thing, and what would happen is we went with this very kind of warm Florida look, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I think the woods look kind of just muddy and gross.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this big turning point in the film where you're like, I think we need to go towards a cooler look and make this look more like still Florida, but a little bit more like a jungle instead of like a warm swamp. And
Totally.
it was this interesting. So let's talk about that. Like having a vision, but realizing kind of a good portion in, like actually this doesn't work, and this color is going to
Yeah.
tell a story. So like let's talk about that. Like in the post process, how do you as a director approach your team and say, I love what we're doing, but I don't actually think this is working in the end?
You the As a director, what you have to remove is the, oh, they're going to be angry at me, or oh, they're going to be upset at me, or oh, they're going to be annoyed with me. Because at the end of the day, what will annoy someone the most is, if you, not only if you take their time, but if you take their time and make something that is not worth watching. Someone would always rather you have a strong opinion about something to make something better, because then that just makes everyone's time more valuable. You just have to sort of trust your gut, to be honest. Anybody can look at something and go, I know what I said, but I think I was wrong. Allow yourself to be wrong, and know that the movie is more important than your own ego or your own brilliant idea or whatever you think it is. Um, but also, I mean, you got to treat people the right way. That's the thing. Is, if I think the days of James Cameron are kind of over. I mean, he's sort of the last dinosaur of that sort of era of the scream at people, this is what I have to have kind of a director. Yeah, you've got to tell people why. I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's the biggest thing in a relationship. It's the biggest thing in a partnership. It's the biggest thing as a leader. It's the biggest thing in a creative team. Is you have to tell people why. If you just go, hey guys, we have to change the whole first 45 minutes. The orange doesn't work. Well, yeah, you're going to be really mad because you're going to go, why? Why? That's such a waste of time. But if you can find a way to communicate, it's because this needs to be a horror movie, and I feel like this color palette is making it too bright, and it doesn't have this tension that it could have if it was darker and cooler. If you can communicate the why of an adjustment or something big like that, then not only are people more willing to work with you, but people actually understand what they're doing. Because now it's like, you guys could have just made the whole thing blue instead. And that would have looked completely wrong too, because we didn't want it more blue. We wanted it to feel different. And so when you can communicate cinematically the feeling, like that's sort of the when you're ready to give a no.
And I
It's
think that's
sort
a
of
great
why. What does it mean?
Yeah, I think that's a great note because, like, in post production, one of the biggest things as like either colorist or an editor or even audio is we show you something and it's kind of like, yeah, that's great, and it's like, well, where do we, like, is there more? Like, is it what you want? Is it not what you want? We need a little bit of direction here. So I think it's a great note because in post, like, we do want to hear how you're feeling about it. We do want to know where you're going. We don't want to get screamed at because that doesn't help anybody. But at the same time, like,
Mhm.
you appreciate the note to make the film better because, in post production, our goal and one of our jobs is to trust the director that they are making the best decision for this film. You know,
Mhm.
we are not, post production is not the director, right? Like, at the end
And
of the
that's
day,
yeah,
and so, like, but I think that was like, well, something we kind of talked about was like there was a major shift in this movie. Like, we changed the look of the film.
yeah.
Like, I don't know how far. I mean, we were pretty close to like all acts being colored and finished, and it was kind of like you came in, you're like, guys, it's not working. I understand where you're going. I love the look, but I don't think it fits this film. I remember being
Mhm.
very graceful. It was, and but that is something in post production that it actually is. There's an appreciation for. It's like, okay, you actually have the vision for it. Like, this is cool. And I think at the end we were all like, this was the right call. This looks way
Yeah.
better than where we were.
Well, thank
And it
you. I
was just like,
appreciate that.
yeah, because it was like it did need to be a cooler look, you know,
Mhm.
um, and color temperature wise. Um, but yeah, so that was something that we have discussed a lot. Is like
Yeah.
the need for the director to communicate the vision clearly. So in post
Mhm.
production, we understand where you're going, um,
Yeah.
and I think like, and it's okay for the vision to change, you know,
Mhm.
as long as it fits in the parameters so we can get it done in time,
Yeah,
you know.
as long as you have an overall vision, elements of it are inevitably going to change. I mean, there's no physical way you can possibly plan every single moment and look and sound of an entire movie. You can't do that. Things are inevitably going to change or shift as like reality sets in of what you're filming and what the moments become and all of that. Um, yeah, I think a lot of directors aren't ready to direct something of that size if you have to put it on your post-production team to like save my thing or what do you think kind of a thing. There's a difference between trusting your post-production team and their opinions and collaborating. There's a difference between that and just not having any idea what's going on and just putting the onus on somebody else. So I would challenge directors to, you can be wrong. Just have a choice, have a thought, have a direction in mind, and then if you the whole team will know if something needs to be adjusted. It won't just be like the director oh, that director looks stupid because we had to change that. No, it's everything's changed all the time. So
Oh, we
yeah,
say
you
we say
should
it's
not drop it on the post team.
we say it's puzzle pieces being put together, but those puzzle pieces change constantly. So,
Yeah,
um,
your puzzle pieces to different puzzles that morph.
yeah. So speaking of like things that are changing, things that are you're having to figure out what color it should be. What about this creature? There's nothing else out there like this creature, so you have to come up with what
Mhm.
it sounds like. What was that like?
Well, so you guys recommended Tyler Kitchens, which is he? I hope he's doing more sound stuff,
He is actually.
more sound design stuff.
So yeah,
He
so
did
he's
a he did a fantastic job.
yeah.
Yeah, Tyler's normally a
But I worked
composer
with
for.
him. I wanted her to sound because she is in the final sort of evolution of her creatureness. She is this genuine gorilla sized monster. So I wanted something that sounded genuinely like we're in Jurassic Park. But then also there's a haunted, devastated, tortured woman inside of this thing. So I wanted to find some kind of high pitch squeal element to it that sounded like a woman who had been turned into this monster. So it was just a whole bunch of trial and error from what I remember. He would play with different sounds. He would I think he even made just like ooh, ooh sounds himself, and then
Yep.
he would like morph them in his software, and like just what do you think about this? And he would squeal up the pitch and take it down, and um, so we finally got to sort of a really nice sort of roar that we found with a bunch of different animals sort of pieced together. And but it was, to me, it was still missing sort of that high, just that little hint of there's a woman inside of it, a dying woman inside of it. And I saw a video. I don't even know where it came from or why it. I must have been searching something and YouTube recommended it to me. But YouTube recommended me a video on Aztec death whistles, and they were what the Aztecs, they would sneak, within whistle distance of their enemies at night, and they would blow these little whistles that are like the size of like this mouse, and some of them would be like shaped like skulls, and like they'd have like carvings in them and stuff, and they would blow into these things, and they're terrifying. I mean, they sound like a demon, like a squealing, high pitched demon. I mean, it is horrifying, and the really high pitched ones sound really feminine and just shrieking, shrilling on in your body. And I said, "Hey Tyler, can we throw some of that in there?" And that was kind of the final layer that
Hmm.
really hit it for me. So we found this sort of deep dinosaur like roar that then we melded in that high screeching sound, so it kind of hits you in all sorts of ways, especially when you see it in like full surround. It's just it really hits you kind of in the loins. It's nice.
That's
Yeah,
good.
it's interesting because Tyler's normally a composer, so it was cool being able to say, "Hey, do you think you could do this thing?" And like,
Yeah,
and of course,
he
like
loved it. I
they
mean,
work in layers, and
I say he loved it. He jumped in 100%. I mean, he was like sending me stuff. Boom, what do you think about this? I mean, he seemed to be all about it. So I was so thankful. I just an absolute pleasure working on that with him. Yeah.
that's awesome. On a kind of a final note, let's talk about this. I think you and I talked about this the other day. You
Uh-huh.
star in the movie and you directed the movie. Would
Hmm.
you do that again?
Absolutely. I would. I think I've spent 12 years as a professional actor, so acting comes so naturally to me at this point that that was the easiest part of the whole shoot for me, was when I stepped in front of the camera and just sort of did kind of my thing, so to speak. I think I need some more experience as a director and as a filmmaker, as a writer, and as a producer before I try to jump in and do that again.
Hmm.
I would like to do a good couple of projects where I just get to sit back and think about the story and focus on the storytelling and making it before I jump back in and do it, because I think sort of my weakest
Yeah.
artistic ability right now is in the actual filmmaking part of it. So I think that's where I want to focus for the next couple projects. But I think I'll
You'd come
absolutely
back
do it
to it.
again.
You'd come back to
I
juggling at
enjoyed,
some point.
I did, yeah.
So you'd come back to juggling at some point, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard because
Yeah.
as much time as I spend writing right now and as much time as I spend like developing like the next movies I want to make, it I'm still a performer in my soul.
Yeah.
It doesn't, as much as I want to like squash that and tell it to go away, it always bubbles
It'll
back
live
up and
there,
there's no way to keep it down. So yeah, I will definitely do it again. I think I want to get better as a filmmaker first
Cool.
before saying, yeah, I got all of it, let's go. I think for myself, I wanna learn and sponge and soak up a little bit more knowledge and experience before I jump back in and do it.
So one of the things in this is, I think it's interesting in that, you get into post, have a movie, you have an edit. Now you got to move into music. And,
Mhm.
there's always different approaches. Some directors are just kind of like, here's the movie, please go take care of this. Or some are a little bit
Mhm.
more involved. What was that process like for you working with your composer for this film?
Mhm.
And what, in that communication, what were you trying to communicate to get to a final product? Like
Sure. So I didn't even move into composing. I knew who my composer was basically as we were filming. I already knew who I wanted to work with. Kelsey Woods. She's just phenomenal. She's just amazingly good. And I had worked with her on a previous project, and I knew because I knew I wanted to do a more sort of classic, sort of orchestral score, and that's what she did really, really well. Was orchestral, classical, violin, piano, just really moving music, storytelling music to her. There's a storytelling sense to her creations, and it basically started out where I said I want the music to be telling us a story within the story. I want the music to be a traditional Hollywood score that sweeps us up into it. I want it to be beautiful and I want it to be haunting. I didn't just want to go to SoundCloud or wherever and just pay for a bunch of pieces of music and drop them in. I wanted it to. I wanted because the creature, because she is this beautiful South American woman and there's this legend about her. I wanted there to be this beautiful haunting music to the movie that sort of matched the energy of that creature and of that legend.
That's one of the most fun parts is putting the music in, I think.
Hmm.
um,
It changes everything. I mean, it does. You can make you can make an episode of Breaking Bad a slapstick comedy with the right music. I mean,
yeah.
there's something to the music really is to me the movie.
You can also put the
It-
music in and it can absolutely suck, but that's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
and a different
Well,
day.
anything can absolutely suck. I mean, that's the
We've
goal
heard
is to
some
when it puts it
bangers.
in and it works and you're like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that was worth the time and the effort and the energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Curse of La Patasola is on Stars, right? You said it's going to be on Tubi probably at the end of the year. And it's
Until
also for
October
rent everywhere.
2023, yes.
And then it's for rent everywhere if you actually want to
So
be an awesome person.
support your local
support your-
filmmakers.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do. I could not be more proud of it.
Good.
Especially for the first movie we've ever made to have the audacity to make a creature like we made to tell a story that I feel like tried to say a little bit more than what it had to.
Yeah.
It could have just been an easy little cut 'em up movie, and I think we really went to say something. I couldn't be more proud of it. So I think people, especially creature feature people, will really enjoy it. So yeah, please go give it a watch.
Well, thanks for chatting with us, AJ. I'm sure we'll be seeing you again, hopefully soon.
Of course, guys. Yeah, next one's coming up.
Sweet.
All right, sweet.
See you, AJ. Southern Fried Post is produced by Sean McCain and me, Walker Whited. Music and incidentals by Tyler Kitchens. All recordings done in studio at W Squared Media. Follow us on Instagram at W Squared Media for more information on new episodes. Thanks for listening.